There are many other things of historical interest here at Clarendon. I intended today to just talk about the bridge. Clarendon was established in 1846 as a crossing of the Onkaparinga River. The original bridge was not built until 1857, but before that the crossing was by a ford, which still exists today. The original bridge was a stone and timber construction. The present concrete bridge was built in 1919. It is a shame we can't get a better look at the bridge. The construction of it and the adjacent weir are remarkable. Just to place Clarendon, Adelaide is here, Clarendon is here. They were extracting copper from this mine from 1860. In 1868 they realised the ore contained silver and they were then processing for that. Their efforts proved inefficient and they closed the operation down in 1870. Right, our next stop is McHarg Cottage. George McHarg was an early settler of this area. George and Sarah McHarg lived in this cottage from 1840 as their base for their 3 adjoining 80-acre allotments. The cottage was continuously lived in right through until 1976. A bushfire and then 2 separate arson attacks have reduced it to this condition. So we've come here to the Mount Bold Reservoir. Mount Bold is the largest water reservoir in South Australia. The construction of Mount Bold Reservoir began in 1932. It was opened in November 1938. The capacity was again increased in 1962. The reservoir is surrounded by some 5,500 hectares of native forest catchment land. So I just had lunch at the Kangarilla General Store. What I was going to try and do from this spot was find the, as near as I could, the old coach road just up from Kangarilla itself. After a double crossing of this particular puddle, I don't think I'll do it again until it dries out a bit. What I will do is try and pick up the coach route to Prospect Hill. So this little track that we're bumping up, it's called Stagecoach Lane, and if you follow it far enough, you eventually end up at Kangaroo. And that was my intention, was to follow it as far as I could. I can't go all the way, I don't think. But anyway, I think we'll save that for another time. If one looks on a map and draws an extension to Kingfisher Road, it comes out exactly on the turn off to Prospect Hill on the main road. I've come to a location just outside of Prospect Hill. I have two stories to tell you. The first especially relevant to this location, and the second more relevant to the general Prospect Hill area. I'll perhaps tell the second one first. The Prospect Hill township was somewhat impacted by the 1983 bushfires, and also close by farms. Attending the Prospect Hill Museum, I once met a lady by the name of Joyce Smart. Joyce tells the story of the 1983 bushfires where her farm was affected. She spent the day out in the paddocks with her cow herd, her dogs, and I believe a couple of kangaroos, moving from location to location around the paddocks to avoid the flames and find clear air amid the smoke. Joyce and her entire cow herd and her dogs all survived. If we return to the other story, in June 1839, John McHarg and his wife Elizabeth and their 7 children arrived to South Australia. Within 2 years they were settled at McHarg's Creek, as it was called, pioneering a farm out of native bushland. In June 1841, surveyor Thomas Burr was surveying the region. The surveyor's camp was on the hill just behind me. At this time, Thomas Burr's wife gave birth to a new child. The McHarg and the Burr families were known to each other, having come out on the same ship. Sarah McHarg, the 22-year-old daughter of John and Elizabeth, volunteered to help in the first weeks after the birth. Mrs. Burr and Sarah McHarg were the only ones left in the surveyor's camp while the men were away working. Some 6 weeks after the birth, Mrs. Burr felt comfortable that she could cope with the new baby. Sarah McHarg was to go home. McHarg's Creek was less than 8 kilometres away on an even then well-defined track. Sarah McHarg left from the surveyor's camp just behind me, went along the track to McHarg's Creek, and that was the last she was ever seen. It will always be a mystery why she ever left the track, but it is assumed that at some point she left the track and became lost. It was not known for some 2 weeks that she was even missing. The men from the surveyor's camp assumed she was at home. Her family assumed she was still at the surveyor's camp. Obviously a search was made, but with no result. 2 years passed before her remains were found down towards present-day Tuparang. In the book found with her remains, Sarah had etched, "Dear Elizabeth, grieve not for me. I am resigned to my fate. It isn't to be wondered that Sarah couldn't find her way home. The country was untouched and unpopulated. Once off the known track to her home, this is the country Sarah had to contend with. Sarah and her parents are buried in the Currency Creek Cemetery. So this is the location known as McHarg's Creek. There is no way to know where John and Elizabeth's farm was, and it probably doesn't matter. They were to leave here and move down to the lower Finnis. There is just one more thing left to do today. It's impossible to know if this is the original grave site. The stone with its plinth seems to have been placed inside another yarded grave. Thank you for coming along today. We'll see you next time.